Hey, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Katie, and thanks to everybody for coming out, especially Deb and my sister Emily, who drove all the way from Atlanta, and Heather. It's so good to see friendly, supportive faces. I'm going to read from my book, Given, which deals with environmental devastation at the Jersey Shore, particularly during Hurricane Sandy and Irene. I'm going to start with Bayshore Elegy. Cars hiss on the wet streets. Rain dissipates the smell of low tide, dried seaweed. The bay spits up a tire swing, sunsick rubber, split rope. You'd have to be crazy to call home a strip of sand that will be underwater in 50 years, and oh my God, what does that make me? Before slag and smelt and lead, this was clam country. Then, during Prohibition, a causeway for bootleg. The bottles dumped overboard at the sight of police. Even now, barefoot, you might cut your feet on 100-year-old glass the bay purged. I lean against the window, listen for another rush of rain. I shouldn't be here. I've come home the way rain returns to the earth, only to become runoff, to take with it whatever it can carry. But don't misunderstand. I'll carry this when the bay takes it all back. Call of the grackle, whine of the turkey vulture. Blighted clams, raw and red in their half shells. The harbor, insistent where it shifts against the gravel, where turning cars leave in their wake infinity signs. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. I have a few poems in here titled Given, and I'm gonna read the first one. Given, a factory town, smokestacks that leaked poison into the bay until it swelled, glowed green, too liquid for its frame. Given, the sky breaks and remakes, pours its wet rage on the tortured apartments. Even the manor on the hill, that stronghold, shaken, foundation rolling like the planet itself. Given the smell of machine tinged with singed fists of hair, the hiss and spit of ash. Given the water, as seen from the road, is already at eye level. Given the lights have dulled the constellations from the skies. Given the blackjack oak, bare branches pitchforking skyward. Given the blighted tissue of leaves, the wind, a graceless pallbearer. Given the cell tower's obelisk, given clams turned to plastic in their shells. Given once this was a harbor, given chemical clouds stipple the sky. Boxwoods. We didn't tokenize our grief with candles or crosses, harbored no belief in ghosts, though we wondered about movements in the boxwoods, the horses' sudden startles, the dim flickers, inexplicable years later in the house. Wondered what the moths that scaled the walls, groped the window panes for solace, were hiding. The dead are territorial. This we understood. We knew why mothers name their daughters after things that cling to the ground. So many rosemaries and ivies, hazels and lavenders begging to be buried, the scent of boxwoods sticking to their skin. Apostrophe. Ocean, every so often, a kitchen tile or child's toy rises from you, years after the hurricanes passed. This time, the disaster was somewhere else. The disaster was always somewhere else until it wasn't. Punctuation of the morning after, comma between red sky and sailor's warning, white space where a storm cloud lowers. Where the bay breaks away, the sentence ends. A waning crescent of peninsula, barely visible but for the broken buildings, the ambulance lights. Ocean, even now, even shaken, you hold the memory of words, of worlds that failed, slowly, then all at once. A flotilla of gulls falls onto you, mourners draped in slate. Okay, thanks. I'm gonna close out with this one. I wanted to be surrounded by water. Tonight, at the end of the hottest summer on record, after 3 consecutive record-breaking summers, my husband and his brother are hooking up the gas generator, dragging the porch furniture into the shed. There's a tropical storm watch along the Jersey shore, and people are bracing themselves for evacuation. Some people don't choose this. I did. I wanted to be surrounded by water, to find home easily on a map. I wanted streets with names that were self-explanatory: Harbor Way, Shore Concourse. I wanted to mark on the shoreline their disappearance, the way at the site of an accident near Highway 35, someone hung crosses, plastic flowers, photos of a young girl. I wanted also to leave something behind, to document what was and what will never be. I wanted the thick promise of soil, wanted to expect recklessly. I wanted to sit still enough that something could take root under me. I wanted to greet migrating birds from an off-season beach as empty as I was, waiting for the ocean's sharp punctuation. I wanted an August raucous with crickets, katydids, creatures I didn't even know how to see, creatures making new creatures despite everything, so unfailingly alive. I wanted my children to ride their bikes to the end of the road, climb over the guardrail, and watch New York gleam across the bay. And when it rained, I wanted them to look up at the same lightning-pocked sky I'd seen. I wanted children, despite the dying world. In my husband's box of old papers, a journal entry from the flood of '92. They slept on cots in a school cafeteria for days, waited in the dark. Then the bay receded. Those who still had homes went back. If you live here long enough, you'll know this is just part of living. But there are more storms now, more floods, more and more people leave. I wanted also to leave this place behind. I moved to Boston, where I had no ties, made no sense, while 2 storms, one after the other, pummeled everyone I knew back home. Even now, the high watermark signs, Irene and Sandy, link arms like 2 sisters standing on the shore. Even now, scars on the buildings from the swilling ocean, from the flames and ashes, the slow and quiet smoke. All this to say, I wasn't here, not when it mattered most. What mattered most? There were some who rode the storm out on the porch, waited for waves to gather, then crest over the bulkhead. Fog was the shabbiest color, known by its smell of salt. Outside those houses where they'd learned to feel the tightening of a hasp reverberate in their chests, how the wind forked every birch that bent at the waist, tore the pear tree's husk from its stake, unclustered elderberry, elderflower. Some things break at the first sign of decay, a canoe, poisoned oysters in the bay, sinews from some other storm slot house, its plumbing, kitchen tiles, shingles laced with tarp. In the driveway, a boat trailer harvesting rust. I wanted children, despite the dying world. Say what you will. Expectation softened the impact of a 100-year flood, softened even the atramental rain, which softened the earth to our shoes. The child we lost, a girl I don't know. She occurs to me in photographic shades: ochre, burnt sienna, vintage bronze. Memory has softened her outline as the bay smoothed edges of broken glass, returning it graspable, shatterproof. In the haze of the neon sky, flecks of her face flash in and out of focus. Say what you will, this is home now. I walk these beaches. I lost a child here. I had to write myself back into this place, if only to watch it fall apart. But tonight, the storm turns quietly in on itself. No one evacuates. Only a few tree limbs on the lawn and a silver pulse of sky. My husband and I drive to the bay to see the benign clouds, the sun sinking over the factories. We watch the leaves turn inside out, a storm warning come too late. The bay rising so softly we barely notice. Thank you, everyone.
Beautiful reading, thank you. My name is Nicole Robinson, and thank you all for being here so much, especially Maggie Anderson, a dear friend of mine and mentor, actually my first poetry professor when I was an undergraduate student. So thank you for believing in me all those years ago. Also, this area is very near and dear to my heart. My mother's family is about 45 minutes from here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So this place feels like a little piece of home. So thank you. I'll be reading from my book Without a Field Guide. A lot of birds appear throughout the book, and possums and other creatures and wildlife. I think the Without a Field Guide might be as much human though as other. Body of the Great Blue Heron. Body of the great blue heron, mostly gray, body of morning, body to hold the torrent of water in still land, body with gravity and flight, and who doesn't love a contradiction? Body of neck, length of a snake, body with a dagger for a bill and barrel for torso. What do we hold in our chest? Blood in an exhale we can't let go, memory and muscle, a whole body of breath. Herons got a body of hollow bones. What lives inside that space? Is that where the soul lives, in whatever cavity it can find? Is that our soul when we're alone that thuds in the chest against the breastbone? Heron's body, a feather and fringe claw, is a body beside a colony of bodies who prefers to forage alone. Body of fresh water, body of salt, body with legs disappearing underwater. The heron will defend its feeding territory, throw its wings open, tilt its head back, point its bill towards sky, and stretch itself as large as a can, a body of belief. It will lift with one flap of its wings, carry its body through the body of sky. This next poem is titled Because of Beatitude, and my wife came home one day, bird watcher, she's the bird watcher. I look at them, but I don't have their calls memorized and their names and everything else. But she came home one day. They have this like secret little society bird watchers do, and they call each other when a certain species is around. And so Deb went to go see a bird called a yellow rail, but unfortunately she came home in tears because everyone failed to mention that the bird was injured. So after she told the story to me, it was intense and felt really hard to hold. And when things are hard to hold, the page can hold it. So, because of beatitude. A bird can only fly so long after injury from a mower. Once tight-beaked in a camouflage of weeds, now it flies for everyone to see, flawlessly, with its yellow chest and white patch at the back of its wings, until it tries to land but fumbles upward again. And we see its legs are gone, little stubs of pink. Can you imagine the yellow rail's final landing? Does the bird fly as high as it can just to quit and plunge to the ground? Or does it die there, in air, one last trusting beat of its wings? Of course, the death of the bird isn't the point. The point has to be the bird's life, what it saw, and who saw it while flying so blessedly damaged. To clarify, I mean to say those deer walked into Dick's Sporting Goods to buy their own camouflage. I mean, the girl I was at 10 keeps hiding, and the one at 19, I never met. I mean, they keep trying to smell the iris and wear its pollen for makeup. I mean, they got lost like any coin tossed into a wish, the way ice on Lake Erie disappears into itself. I mean, those deer only wanted to go shopping to find some way to survive. I wasn't gonna read this poem, but I felt like I ought to. There's a great beach after you're reading it, so thank you. It made me think of this poem a little bit. There's a great beach in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where my sister-in-law lives, and it's called Boneyard Beach, and it's where a lot of eroded trees wash up. So this is Boneyard Beach. A gull calls and disappears into fog at Boneyard Beach, where trees uprooted from erosion reach their bone-white branches like hands toward the Atlantic. What will I be reaching for when I die? The ice melt in the Arctic raises the sea levels thousands of miles away, and waves crash to the shore. Is there ever distance between us? There's a girl here who leaps over sea foam and ducks under tree bones. She taps a tree. "You're it," she screams, then laughs and skips further into fog and further from me. I wave, but she doesn't see. I climb the fallen tree she tapped like it was a whale I'd ride in her game of tag at sea. This nothing around us could be something that saves us. Fog thickens in front of the tree while its roots behind me stay rooted to air. The girl is gone from what I can see. Under me, a dead gull lies in the sand, pinning a green leaf. Thank you. I'll read 2 more poems, so we have plenty of time for all the fabulous readers. So because my wife is a bird watcher, and she has lots of ornithologist friends, and we don't live far from the Cleveland Natural History Museum, we have dead birds in our freezer. I had a friend, a former grad student who was dog sitting once, and she called me and said, "I thought you guys were vegetarians." We are vegetarians. I don't eat the birds, I promise. But it's when folks find a dead bird, we can take it to the Natural History Museum and they can use it for science. So, wing in the freezer. To understand desire, be Angerona in Rome. One finger over your mouth. Her statue was found in a shrine for the goddess of pleasure. By the way, there's a wing in my freezer. It's April, and I'm in Ohio taking photos of snowdrops. Snowdrops are early spring flowers, small balloons of white hanging from leaves. In my dream, I was voluptuous. Good morning, pleasure, or good morning, pleasure. Angerona lifted her finger from her lips and told me a secret. I promised to keep it, but I'll share this. When desire and pleasure meet, stars connect like the streetlights I pass when I drive to assist in the after-death migration of birds, grass to freezer to Natural History Museum. I forgot to tell you, it's a blue-winged teal wing pinned cardboard, and it's next to a flicker and finch found dead in the grass by the road. A hunter friend killed the teal in season, ate it, then gave me the wing. I'm vegan, but he knew I had a freezer of berries and dead birds. The birds are for science. The berries are for me. I don't feed the dead, but last night I spoke with them. And I'll finish with the poem, poem titled Memory. The rabbit's tracks grow larger as the snow melts. So goes memory, I guess. Moments are small, dancing in the kitchen to the talking heads while I chop what vegetables I have left. After snow covered the dunes like a shrine, after waves broke their shape on the shoreline, after I piled all I could into words, I came home to these tracks and dinner. Who knows what will be made of this spinach and sweet pepper? What I'll taste when I finish the dinner I didn't plan. Burnt onions and black beans heating, potatoes that soften in water. Outside, tracks in the snow grow larger. What was seen is no longer as it was. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming out for poetry on a Sunday. Weather's so nice even. And also thank you so much to Malaprop for putting this together. It is a joy to be here. I am Erin Elizabeth Smith and I have a lot of postcards, apparently. I do want to give a content warning. Ghost Animal does deal with childhood sexual abuse. I will read some poems from that, so feel free to step away as needed. So the book is in persona, is a character named Dot. Dot happens to have all of my ex-boyfriends, among other things. After 6 months of emails, Dot has dinner with a much older man. The night Dot meets him, she is 15 and slender as water. She rubs at the wine glass, tinny with ice, but does not make it sing. She feels how large his hand is, the veined knuckles flecked with age in the warm, low light. She turns her lettuce, which over and over, which is almost like eating. After, he wraps Dot in his car, stows her to the hotel where the bed is tight as new jeans. On the walls, framed women lounge in gardens, their faces in a Monet pastel, while the clock blinks its stormy numbers. Dot sits on the edge of the bed, feet dangling as clothes do from lines, until he lowers himself onto her, rough fingers on her back, closing and opening until something in her lights. She swallows down a feeling of bees, a swarming that churns through her when she opened her eyes to his hungry mouth that spread so wide she wondered if the world was made of only sticks and straw. Yeah, this is a real bummer of a reading. Sorry. His children watch from picture frames. Each childless weekend, Dot drives from school to where the hills repose along cursive horizons. She thinks of him waiting to want her as the sun glares the rear view. She has not met his children, and she wonders if they know of her, 6 years younger than the oldest, whose picture beams from his tall dresser, her hair as straight and split as deckwood. Dot looks at Jenny sometimes from the bed and thinks of her own posed smiles, braced grin like a mouthful of staples, how once a thin wail as she bent the metal to release. How she kissed him everywhere as apology and he turned her to the wall where Jenny looked down like a technicolor ghost, another girl pursing her lips, whispering, "Hold tight." I promise. The night Dot leaves, she takes nothing. That night, Dot wakes when his wisp of a cat crawled on her chest, a swift banshee with yarrow eyes. Dot reaches to touch her, but she leaps to the floor, strides the unmoved carpet out his room. Dot follows like Eurydice into the unnamed black. She treads each witchy stair, and the cat does not keen or look back, its pyramid ears angled at the door, which whispers open. Dot walks out, her nightgown no more than a film of salt. Somewhere in this dark, washed world, she hears the sun begin to purr. So I think it's fun as writers, like a lot of times we think that or I think a lot of people think that we write chronologically, right? That like the poems in the book like happen from start to finish, or that books happen from start to finish. And this book is in some ways a work in progress. It was things I could not write about, things I could not write about in first person, things I could not kind of like grapple with until much later. And so this poem, they're actually kind of before the epilogue of the book, is a poem I wrote as an undergrad a million billion years ago. It's been reworked 1,000 times, but it is I think, you know, a testament to the way that we work through many things throughout our lives, and that we build our stories, and that our lives don't happen chronologically. So this is called The Year of the Rooster. It is November. In Pennsylvania, color breaks apart the sidewalk, drapes the evening in an orange tongue. 6 years, and I am no older. Wax petrified and falling, a tank of black mollies that circle and rise. That last day, we threw rocks into the rough Rappahannock, and Virginia seemed ceaseless, splintering the smooth asphalt, making faces in the cloud. Until he turned and said he couldn't do this anymore, tapping a cigarette from his breast pocket. I only quit when you were around. November, and the streets are strewn with trash cans. The geese have rambled south, and I have found his letters, a poem about him telling me how he touched you once. No twice, no maybe more, when you were 15. 15. My year of peanut butter sandwiches, of Joni Mitchell and Sexton learning to give head. For you, instead, it was the year of your father's hands, those fat, rough hands that knew how to move in my skirt. The year of the rooster, his salamander grip. There is a room in my house, Jenny, where the morning splits open and the trees rub against the window like a calico house cat. We have made soup and tea. And the seasons, they change here, shift from the ghostly gray to a sprig of yellow and green. What is Virginia anyhow? Just a dog-eared book, a river swallowing stone, just your father who knew the way my body bucked on hotel sheets, who called me once by your name. I lied. It's just all sad. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna finish with two newer pieces. So I'm working on a book of poems. My partner is in the military, and he was deployed for a year, and it sucked. I don't know if anybody here has dealt with that in some capacity, but it is terrible. Yeah, it's just kind of expected, literally just like suck it up, buttercup for America. So I was trying to write my way through that. These last two poems are from that forthcoming collection. So are forthcoming, the fourth writing collection. Desire Lines. In the forest, the heat is heavy, wet with the smell of s'more and dirt. I skirt down bluffs, hunting milkcap, chanterelle, new tufts of pink clover. Each step, another spider web graze my hair. You wouldn't recognize me already, my body laced with plum bruises, thin estuaries of scab. A friend told me nature requires sacrifice, each cut a blood oath, a promise to hold its secret. You scoff on the phone, but I think it's true. Yesterday, I followed a desire path into a gully red with cinnabar, each opening like a tiny parasol in the loam. I laughed, and it echoed off the hill, scaring up a young stag who bounded like starflash. You tell me we will survive this, find the straightest line through the dark. And I say, I will try, to be sure-footed as I can, to be brave in the face of nothing at all. And it's a little love poem, and it's the title is a line from Nomi Stone. To love is to tell the story of the world. the whole world. The belled ears of a field mouse, chimney smoke, one balloon loosed in a chalky sky. To love is to see nothing but the living vine on the down tree, new buds kernelling in the spindled fig. It is not the ice, the toe-headed koi that spin in delicious loops below, or the way bells whip their tongue into time. I look at you and all I see is the clearest sound, the sweetest blackberry pinched from the vine, all the stars, sharp holly in the mirror dark. Thank you all again.
That's great. Thank you so much, Darren. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to the good folks at Malaprop for hosting this reading. I'm going to, did I mention my name? Sorry, Owen McLeod, that's me. I often forget. I'm gonna read my first poem from my first book, Dream Kitchen. You might have heard the writing cliche, write what you know. That's a bit of a problem for me since I don't know very much, and what I do know is not particularly interesting, so I have to write what I can imagine, as you're about to see. This poem is called In My Wife's Vegetable Garden. I was startled to find among the beans and cucumbers, the tomatoes and squash, the peppers, eggplants, cabbage and kale, my head, or what seemed to be my head. It was certainly a human head pushing up through the soil, taking root, the skull cap sprouting hair, facial features developing, weak chin, puffy cheeks, crooked nose, lips too thin for kissing, definitely me. I casually brought it up. The cucumbers are coming along, I said. I also noticed a human head. Oh, it's something new I'm trying this year, she said. Pretty sure it won't work. I wanted her to say more, but her tone made it clear the conversation was over. I didn't like where this was going. I studied my head in the mirror. I worried she wanted to replace it. I'll admit, it's not a perfect head, but then what's the point in growing a duplicate? Would she harvest it early, replace my old head with a younger one? That would mean cutting off my head, which is murder. Surely my wife isn't capable of that, I reasoned, but would it be murder? Not if she were merely replacing a part. Yeah, how would that work? I hadn't heard of any head transplants. Then again, I'd not heard of heads growing in gardens either. Next morning, while she was jogging, I stole into the garden with a spade, intent on digging up my head and killing it. Have you ever tried to chop off your own head? It's not that easy, believe me, especially if it's staring right at you, helpless, up to its neck in dirt. I tried several times, but I just couldn't do it. I'd have to let it live. Maybe it would simply die on its own. I discreetly monitored the growth of my head. By August, it was mature, complete with beard and glasses. My wife reaped tomatoes, beans, cucumbers, kale, but not my head. She tended to it with care, fed its mouth by hand, brushed its teeth, tousled its hair. I didn't know whether to feel touched or jealous. It had been years since she'd shown such affection to me. We used to try to talk things through, have sex when we didn't want to, if only to be able to say we still did it. Now we slept in separate rooms, like siblings instead of lovers. One night, I was wakened by the sound of soft laughter from the garden. I went to the window. In the moonlight, I saw my wife lying on her stomach, chin in hands, talking to my head as if to a college sweetheart. I wanted to know what she was saying to me and what I was saying to her, but I couldn't make it out. I watched as they carried on, just the two of them, my wife and my head. I was surprised hours later when she came to my bed. You said such lovely things, she whispered as she slid under the sheet. Funny too. Remind me, I said, but she was asleep. This continued through August into early fall. My wife coming to me at night after talking to my head in the garden. We made love. I didn't speak, fearing my words wouldn't compare to whatever I'd been saying out there. Late October brought a killing frost. My head was dead, frozen like a pumpkin in the snow. My wife dug a hole and gently lowered me in. When she came inside, fingers red and raw, I asked if she'd try again. She didn't answer, but silently took my head in her hands, waiting for this skull to warm them. Thank you. This is, I'll read a couple of poems now from Before After. This is my second book. It's a pleasure to read this poem in a way because it's set in a town maybe an hour from here. Eagle Beach. After promises, he's invited to his younger sister's house, a cabin on a mountain lake. For 3 days, he sips seltzer with wedges of lemon or lime, but on day 4, he steals away, hikes the half-mile driveway, and drinks the 5th he stashed among thistles on his way in. When he returns, hours later, he is given a day to sober up before being asked to leave. Sometimes he closes his eyes and tries to will himself back, napping on the dock, reading to his niece, talking to his sister while she slices fresh peaches in the piece of her sunlit kitchen. She tried on the lake to teach him how to float. Breathe, she said. Let the water hold you up. This poem is called Last Requests. I want to be excused, at least this once, from being me, and by some miracle roll over dams, under the bridges of cities, a great green river, neither believing nor disbelieving, not searching or keeping, always yet never the same thing flowing. I want a moment of silence for the girl I secretly loved in high school, whose suicide note was just a dog-eared J. Crew summer catalog. She wrote poems with a leaky Bic pen, skipped school to read novels in the fruit-filled woods along the river. I want as my final image, please, her tapering fingers, blackened by ink, plucking those wild persimmons. Thank you. A lot of the poems that I write, when I can manage to write anything at all, are written towards the title. I'll think of the title and type it on the page, and then just wait or stare at it until a poem sort of emerges from enough staring at that title. This is one of those poems. This bag is not a toy. Punching bags, laundry bags, bags on planes for puke. Bags of money and bags of dicks. Dicks just bags of bad blood. Sandbags damming the rising sea. The sea a simmering stew of bags. Diaper bags, colostomy bags. A man teabagging his blow-up bag. Bags of transmuting and bags of need. Bags of devouring and bags of weed. Grocery bags crammed with family-sized bags. Book bags bulging with guns, but no books. Golf bags for presidents, body bags for troops. When the angels come, transparent and small, we'll mistake them for Ziploc sandwich bags. They'll weep for us after seeing such things. In the gutter, a bag of barbecued wings. Thank you so much. I'll end with a poem that's not in either book. It came out recently. This poem is called Lacrimosa. At the college gym, I run into Walter, a colleague from English, who tells me he's thinking about crying. Not actually crying, like right there between the dumbbells and the rowing machine. Though, for the record, there'd be no shame in someone crying openly in the middle of a set of biceps curls. What Walter means is he's working on a book about the history and semiotics of crying, specifically Marguerite Kemp, a 14th century English mystic who enjoyed what Walter, following Catholic tradition, calls the gift of tears, which means you're unusually close to the Spirit of God, which suddenly, without warning, fills you and causes you to weep on a regular basis. This reminds me of my eldest sister, who, when we were growing up, often wept openly, and to me mysteriously, since I was too young to know what it meant to be a clinically depressed teenage girl growing up in Tennessee, and how painful this might be, especially back in the dark ages when people, including my parents, thought the solution was more or less sleep and leafy vegetables. The weird part of this is that both my parents were in seminary at the time, at the University of the South, otherwise known as Sewanee, the campus of which is famous for its Gothic stone buildings, complete with gargoyles in the Oxford-Cambridge style. And there was my sister, regularly weeping in the shadows of those structures, just like Marguerite Kemp in medieval England, while my parents were training to become priests and probably yearning for mystical experiences themselves. I try to remember how long it's been since I had an actual conversation with my sister. And while I don't know exactly, I know it's been years, maybe not ever, not even during her divorce or breast cancer or struggles with lithium and ECT. Because she was so much older growing up, we never had a reason to hang out or become friends. And besides, she locked herself in her room much of the time, not to mention I found her crying frightening. Now I regret the distance between me and my sister, who in many ways is exactly like me. And I mourn the loss of those many decades during which we could have comforted each other and maybe become friends. All these thoughts are racing through my head while Walter talks to me, but now he pauses, a concerned look on his face, and asks if I'm okay. And then suddenly, without warning, he reaches out and hugs me. And while I don't believe in God and don't believe in spirits, I do feel grace moving through me as I weep, right there between the dumbbells and the rowing machine. Thank you all.